Hello again. Gauteng Police Commissioner Elias Mawela has criticized the killing, or condemned in fact the killing, of 7 suspected criminals in Diepsloot this weekend. It happened in the northwest of Johannesburg. Lieutenant General Mawela says they're working round the clock to locate the perpetrators. Let's talk further then about the issue of mob violence with Willem Els, a conflict specialist with the Institute for Security Studies. Willem, a very good evening to you. Welcome back to News at Prime. Let's talk about the issue of mob violence, otherwise termed mob justice, and why it is still such a recurring issue in South Africa.
Good afternoon to you. Yes, mob violence and mob justice have been with South Africa for a very long time. And it normally happens in 2 different areas. In one area, in the past, we saw when there was political intolerance, then political people will then isolate their opponents or someone who they regarded as a sellout within their community, and then because they then perpetrated these acts of violence, they killed these people. That is on the political level, but we also see, especially recently, with the low trust levels within the police, that these communities, then it seems that there's a total breakdown of law and order, and then what happens is they take these issues in their own hands, and unfortunately then they break the law themselves.
And you mentioned a crucial issue then of a breakdown in policing. When you look at Diepsloot, we cover in the news, in fact, almost annually, the grievances of residents about a lack of policing or insufficient policing. Even earlier this year, there were issues raised there as well. And people have said, for example, even the police station that was quite recently opened is barely functional. It's dark. People are unable to walk around safely within the community. So when you take that problem, how then do you begin to dismantle the culture of violence altogether when you consider the fact that there is criminality that is seemingly breeding even more violence?
Yeah, I think if we look at the trust levels with the police, it's at an all-time low. We see that communities lost their trust and faith in the police for various reasons. We have to say that there are many policemen and women who are really doing their best and trying, but it seems that they're just overwhelmed with the levels of criminality within South Africa. And what happens then in these areas is either these police are just overwhelmed and under-resourced, and they cannot perform their duties that they have to do in the communities, or on the other hand, these police officers just become part of the problem through corruption, and also by joining these criminal gangs themselves. And as we see in many of the arrests, when these criminal syndicates are arrested, very often there are police officers that are then also arrested with these criminals, that they were part of these criminals. They're only not part of the criminal gangs, but also they turn the other eye. They are facilitating for these gangs to operate within the community. And that we saw especially in the areas in Gauteng, in recently with the illegal mining, where we see that the communities accuse the police of allowing these criminals to operate within their areas. And that obviously led to a breakdown in trust in the police, and that unfortunately then leads to the situation where the community then take the law into their own hands, and unfortunately then they break the law, and there are consequences, because these people that broke the law, ultimately they will now be prosecuted and brought to book.
And to what extent is government or government inaction to blame for what we are seeing in the creation of such a violent cycle in communities such as Diepsloot?
I think government has to take a big chunk of the blame. When you look at the failing state conditions, that is normally the first pillar of a stable state to start to crumble, is when a law and order cannot be maintained, and the state cannot secure or safeguard the safety and the security of its citizens. And we see that that is happening in South Africa all over. We look at the crime index for Africa that has been released last week. We see that South Africa lays currently at number 3, behind Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of Congo. That means that criminality levels in countries in conflict like Libya, like the Central African Republic, like Zimbabwe, like Libya, like also Somalia, that criminality levels seem to be lower there than in South Africa. And that is really a reason for us to worry. We look at the crime statistics that have been released by the minister himself recently. We see that everything is just going south. So clearly, we do not have a working strategy at the moment. We will have to revise our strategy against crime, and we will have to up our game from the government side of course, but also what we need to look at. If you look at solutions, we don't just want to come with the challenges. The solutions is that there's a lot of skills within the private sector, and we see where there are major successes in capturing or arresting these organized crime syndicates, that more often you see that it was a joint operation between the police and the private sector and the communities that took hands, and then they solved that problem. So that is maybe where we need to go.
You could also talk about how current violence in fact sets the stage for future violence, right? Because in one of the articles I was looking at yesterday, I think one woman was saying that her children, young children, basically witnessed this mob attack where these suspected criminals were set on fire, burned so badly that only one of the 7 can actually be recognized. What does that do as far as desensitizing another generation of people to violence, and possibly setting the example that, in fact, in an environment where the law or law enforcement has failed people, all you have is this avenue where you take the law into your own hands?
Yeah, that is a very, very serious issue that you just touched on. Those scenes are scenes that you cannot unsee. Those scenes that those children had to witness will be with them for the rest of their life. And that goes for everyone else that have to witness things like that. If I look at my own experience being a policeman in the 80s and the 90s, where we saw these type of violence, where mob justice was taking place, and you cannot unsee. It has a lasting impact on you as a person, because all of us are human beings, and we are affected by that. But the problem that we have now is that what about the future generation? What about these people that have seen that? What is they going to take forward? And that is why we will have to not only restore law and order, that is to a great extent non-existent in many of these areas that lead to these mob justices. But what we need to do is we need to come up with some possible role models. We have to come up with some positive arrest by the police, some positive joint ventures with the police and the public, where they can start to restore the faith of the public in the police. And that will then start to turn the tide. That on the one hand. On the other hand, also, we have to look, so the criminality levels in South Africa is extremely, extremely high. And it's as if, we want the police now to rectify that moral compass. That is not where it starts. It starts at home. So we will have to put our hand in our own bosom, and we will have to look at how we are educating our children, how we are steering them away from this criminal and this violent society, because at the end of the day, that is where we will make a difference.
Willem Els, conflict specialist with the Institute for Security Studies. Good to have your time. Thank you.